review with the handout that I gave out today. And then we're going to move on. All right, to relax myself, let's start with prayer. Dear Lord, just thank you so much for this beautiful day that we have life, that we woke up and we have all our needs met for food, clothing, and shelter, that we have a church with a community that loves each other to go to and to meet for this class. And I just pray that all those that are here and all those that may watch the class on video afterwards would just be blessed by you, Lord, that we would receive insight from you and healing, that we would learn to let go of those behaviors that got us through our childhood but maybe are causing us problems now, and that we would especially learn the difference between what it means to be a Christian and when we're being a Christian but we're acting in our codependency and actually out of your will. I pray that you would give me wisdom and guidance and that your Spirit would speak through me today and always. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. All righty. So there's some new faces. Welcome. I'm Maureen.
Thank you.
I'm resident counselor here. And this class is on codependency. And a lot of people question what codependency are. A lot of people think you have to be raised in an alcoholic family or you have to have someone with an addiction. That's not necessarily true. If you're raised in a family where someone in the family kind of sucked the energy of everybody else, it could be because they had a mental health problem, or it could be an addiction of some sort. It could be just, one person was depressed, the parent, and so everybody was. If you had that experience where one person in the family needed more attention, then it affects everyone else in the family, and a lot of us can develop codependent behaviors. And this class is Christianity versus codependency because, unfortunately, in our churches and our Christian community, sometimes it encourages those behaviors that are codependent, and it actually, we gravitate to that, and we're not aware of it, and so it can do more harm than good. So it's just for awareness to do check-in for ourselves, and for those of us who struggle with codependency, which I'm very transparent in this, it's an ongoing struggle for me. It's good just to kind of identify those traits and find some ways of dealing with them so that it doesn't come out and hurt other people. So let's just do a review of anybody want to share, and I should say too, you do not have to share in here. It's up to you if you want to. And we are recording, so we ask that if we share our own personal experience, or if someone else is involved in our story, we disguise their names and things like that to protect them. But does anyone want to share some things that you've gotten from the class so far, some things that have stuck with you? We went through definitions of codependency, we went through characteristics of codependency, and last week was rough for a lot of people because we went through our families and how our parents raised us and the impact that had on us and the different roles that we acquired in our homes growing up. I'm going to touch on that a little bit because it's important. I do want to reiterate that as we study about ourselves, you cannot separate from your upbringing and your parents. And as a parent, it's difficult not to judge yourselves. The best advice I have for you is to remember that God knew you were going to be the parent of your children. He knew before you even thought of having a child, and He chose you to be that parent, just as our parents were chosen by God for us. So if God, who's all-knowing, chose us to be a parent, no matter how much we mess up, He knew that was going to happen. He still believed we were the best parent for that child, and our parents were the best parents for us, for what we needed for His purpose and plan. So that's just a little grace you give yourself, because it's really hard when you're in here not to judge yourself as, I messed up there, I messed up there. And we don't want you leaving feeling guilty and ashamed. We want you leaving feeling relieved of burdens and hopeful and ready for change. Okay, so anybody have anything that sticks with them that they want to share? There's been so much, I know.
I really like that page.
This
a
one
lot.
with the
I didn't get
roles.
to come last week, but I had lunch and that just like, I kept looking at that page this week and just where I fit in that. I think it was second to the last one with me.
The scapegoat?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the second to last page was family roles. And this is a kind of a foundation is from an alcoholic family. But the idea in family systems is that everyone in the family will take on a role to keep the family intact. And as children, we don't know we're doing that, but we are. And everything's about energy and stabilizing that energy. So if I had a child, a brother or sister older than me, and if I had an alcoholic parent, then that child may have been the scapegoat. They may have drawn all the attention away from the real problem of the family to themselves. And how that would have shown up is delinquency, failing grades, just where there was a lot of attention, but it was negative attention. And that child wouldn't have known that they were falling into that role, but they would have to draw the attention away and provide stability. Because what do parents do if there's a child in trouble? Do they argue with each other, and is there a threat of divorce with each other? No. They actually get united on what do we need to do about this child. So often as a counselor, especially most of my work prior to moving to St. Louis 10 years ago, was with children and families. And so the children were identified as the client, but the issue was the problem with the parents going on. So that scapegoat role, the primary feeling that we have there that child has is one of rejection and anger, right? They feel rejected because they get in trouble all the time, and that's also going to make them angry. The behavior is delinquency of some sort. The payoff for the individual is the attention, but it is negative. What they bring to the family is distraction. They distract from the real problem that's going on, so they sacrifice themselves, but they pay a big price for that, because as they get older and even in their teenage years, there's a lot of self-destructive activities that they engage in. So if you have a scapegoat that's older than you, they're doing all the negative energy, so you're not going to do the negative energy because it's about balancing the energy in the family, right? So you're probably going to be the lost child or the hero to balance that out.
Can you be two?
You can. You'll prime it. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. You'll play a primary role, but you can switch because everybody's keeping the gears going in the family. So if all of a sudden the scapegoat got sent off to juvie, well, now there's no negative distraction, right? So someone else might step up to the plate and be the scapegoat. So it's always about everybody's keeping these roles to keep the family intact. They move and we play different roles. For example, for me, I was definitely the lost child. There was a lot of 10 kids and middle of the 10 and parentified children, a lot of responsibilities taking care of younger children. So I just got out of that chaos. I told you guys I had a paper route and I resented it so much. But in the long run, it was the best thing for me because it was just me and God the whole time. So it was a foundation of my relationship with Him. But I was so lonely and hated it. But it also prevented me from dealing with a lot of chaos. I had 7 brothers. They fought a lot. That was scary to me. So I withdrew. And then going into adulthood, I had to teach myself how to connect because I had never learned how to do that because I had withdrawn so much. And it still can be a struggle for me. I can connect in teaching, but that's not vulnerability, right? So it's letting people in and receiving from them and asking for what I need. Those are all challenges, or have been challenges, and they still are to this day, depending on where I am. The hero, I was the lost child. Now I tend to play more the hero, where you bring the positive attention to the family, and you just, whether it's grades or whether it's being there to be the one to, get everybody out of a conflict situation, or can reverse to the caretaker, taking care of people. But I'm very careful about caretaker role, because I've learned that when I go into caretaker role, a lot of times I'm in codependency. I'm trying to fix others because I'm not feeling comfortable, or I'm not in tune with my feelings. And one of the things I wanted to stress today is that you'll know that difference because there's a compulsivity to it. And how do you know if you have a compulsion? You know because when you don't do the behavior that you want to do, you feel uncomfortable. When you don't do the behavior that you want to do, you'll feel uncomfortable, and that will let you know when you have a compulsion. And when you have a compulsion, stop, be still, let God minister to you. You're feeling something. And we shared this in class before, but one of the most important components of codependency is to get in touch with your feelings, because we didn't as children. So we need to really be still and figure out, what am I feeling? Because if you don't know what you're feeling, you're not going to know what you need. And I shared there's a medical case study that in the medical field they used, where there was someone who was very well loved, a small village, and there was an accident, and a pole went through his forehead and hit his emotions where he couldn't feel anything. And he ended up not even being able to figure out how to tie his shoes. Couldn't make any decisions. So without feeling, we're stuck with decisions. And then we can flip the coin of codependency and become the victim ourselves and depend on everybody else to do for us. That's not a good place to be either. Okay, any questions so far on any of that? Okay, so today I wanted to highlight a little bit more. I'm glad you brought up the sheet, because I was going to piggyback off of it. On the next page, there's a little chart. It says adaptions to wounding at the concern stage. So in child development, you have different stages where you're supposed to learn certain things. So your first year of life, according to Erik Erikson, is 0 to 1. And ideally, we'll learn trust there. And if we don't learn trust, we learn mistrust. And how that occurs is our blueprint for relationships comes from our interactions with our parents. So if our parents were not tuned into what our cry was according to what it meant our need was, then we don't get our needs met consistently, regularly, in a positive manner, and we learn mistrust. Why? Because we learn that our needs won't always be met, and that threatens our stress response of 2 drives for your first brain: to connect, be social, and to survive, to exist. So if we don't get our needs met, that threatens our survival, and that's scary to us. So we learn mistrust. We don't trust people. That lays a foundation for every other stage of your life, and it's very difficult to be a whole human being if you don't get that in life. The great news is our brain is like plastic. It can be moldable, and we can change. We're not stuck. When attachment theory first came out, I didn't like it, because the way they presented it was, you can't change. You're formed this way. You had a program, a blueprint from your parents, and that's it. And I did not believe that, especially as a Christian, because there's always hope. And now they realize that that's not true, that you really can rewire your brain and your thinking, and you can change. Now, we do have defense mechanisms. We told ourselves certain things, and we acted in certain ways to protect ourselves from the reality that we were in. And even as an adult, they're there, and that's why therapy's around, to help us figure out what our defense mechanisms are and to break through those so that we can have a fuller life today. So that mistrust left us with a need to protect. When we go into that threat to existence, we'll go into the threat response, fight, flight, freeze, right? So it's no longer about you, it's all about me. and the need to protect. So imagine growing up that way and you're in a relationship with someone. You're stuck there. So it's going to have a lot of conflict because you're going to be stuck in believing you can't trust that your needs are going to be met. And you're going to be looking for proof to your belief. And you're going to find it because people aren't perfect. And then that's going to encourage you to use the same defense mechanisms you did as a child. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Okay, so with codependency, we fall into the fawn. That's people pleasing. That's dying to ourselves. It's lack of recognition that we even exist. It's that we need other people or we'll die. That's the basic premise of it. We're not in touch with it, but that's what it is. So it's a leash onto other people. It's a need to be in relationship, but not feeling safe in relationship. It's a horrible way to live because we become puppets, pulled on strings. So if they're happy, we're happy. If they're, and so we want to free ourselves from those defense measures of people pleasing and letting go of ourselves and morphing in or pretending to be whatever we feel other people want us to be so that they won't abandon us and so that maybe we'll get our needs met. We hope. We don't have a lot of faith in it, but we hope. Does that make sense so far? Any questions? Okay. So this chart takes a particular stage, which is the concern stage, and on the left side, the title is caretaker. So we just looked at that other chart where there's a caretaker role, right? A caretaker is a maximizer. Remember, maximizer, when we're under threat, we get big and loud, like a lion. And that's the fighter, that's the chaser, that's the active person that's trying to keep the other person close and engaged, okay? The caretaker has diffuse boundaries. What does that mean? That means that they don't understand that you and I are separate. They kind of live as if we're the same. So again, when you're happy, I'm happy. When you're sad, I'm sad. They're so intertwined with the other person that's in their intimate life, they don't even recognize that they're separate or that the other person is separate. Their basic fear and wound is having or expressing needs, being excluded, and they felt parental rejection. So the basic wound is having needs. Why? Because they weren't met. We had to meet everybody else's needs. Our needs weren't met. Being excluded, fear of abandonment, right? Our parents weren't available. They were concentrated on something else. We were abandoned, maybe not physically, or maybe physically. The internal message, don't have any needs of your own. We developed a defense response of denial. Do you guys know the stages of grief? Shock, denial, bargaining, depression, anger, and then finally acceptance, and they don't necessarily go in that order. Well, all of us who grew up in these families have grief, and many of us are stuck in the first stage of grief, in denial, because we had lots of losses, right? We had loss of connection, we had loss of presence, we had loss of being able to be who we are, and we didn't know that as kids. So many of us are still stuck in that grief, and that's why you go back in therapy and look at your childhood and your parents. It's not to beat your parents up, but it's to recognize that your needs were not met, and it's to grieve that, so that you then can see your parents as human beings, because children tend to put their parents on a pedestal. Remember, they're our survival, so they can't be bad. If they're angry, it's not that they don't manage their emotions well, it's I must be unlovable. I must have done something wrong. That's the child's way of thinking. And if we're in denial, we're stuck still thinking that, even as adults. The core belief, because the internal message is don't have any needs of my own, the core belief is others need me. Because we merged. we think we have power to make others happy. Because when Mom was screaming and yelling and I brought her a Coke, all of a sudden she was happy. So my little kid magical thinking thought, oh, I have the power to make her happy. Now it didn't work every time, but it worked enough for me to believe it. And I needed to believe it because it would be too scary to believe that I had no power in that situation. The image of our partner is based on the image of the parent. So here we are caregiving, we don't have needs, we're filling the needs of our partner, and we perceive them as unappreciative, that they take us for granted. But they didn't ask for half the things we give them. We're reading their mind, trying to, figure out their needs before they even have them. And then we get resentful that we're doing that. But they never asked us to.
Maureen,
Mm-hmm.
so have you seen, and I'm sure you have, like two caretakers together?
Yes.
I mean, because I'm just thinking of somewhat of me and my husband when he was here and how, because some of these things are so him. He's gone, I can't do anything about it now. But it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said this in a class, not necessarily about your husband, but codependents are attracted to codependence. And sometimes a codependent's with an addict, but an addict is a codependent first. They had to numb their feelings, and it's painful to do that. So over time, their defense mechanism, coping mechanism, was a substance, and that gave them relief. As a codependent, our defense mechanism, coping mechanism, is another person who needs me. Because then I can feel good about myself. But my primary is feeling rejected. Well, if they need me, they're not going to reject me. So I use, again, in my position as a counselor, it's really scary. I'm like, God, you're crazy. Because I am drawn towards helping people and getting them to be dependent on me. And you can really hurt people in counseling by leading them to believe they can't make it on their own. They need you. They can't think for themselves. They need you. And for a codependent, that's my drug, right? That's my drug. So you have to be very careful that you're not feeding your own need in whatever you're doing, which is why church is a scary place sometimes. Because if my drug is I need to feel needed, and I need to feel that I'm important or deserving, then I'm going to keep putting myself in situations where people treat me that way. It will never be enough because there's a void inside. But that's why people will gravitate, and we talked about this in one of the classes, to volunteer for everything. But then they get burned out, and then they get mad at the church. But they're the ones that volunteered. Even if someone asks you, you can say no, but codependents don't know they can say no because they're merged. If there's a need, I'm supposed to meet it, which in essence is acting like God, right? And a lot of times we get in the way of God by helping others, because I think many of you would agree it's through our trials, through our brokenness, that many of us came to our knees and said, I surrender, God. I'm yours. I've tried everything on my own and it's not working. So you're going to have to take this because I can't. And that's the best place to be. Okay, the core issue is the partner's exclusion. So the negative about codependence is they don't know that they have a right to their needs, and they don't know their feelings, so they don't know what their needs are and how to ask for it. So they're stuck kind of feeling like their partner doesn't include them, doesn't ever take care of them when they're sick or whatever. But the codependent presents such an image of capability that a lot of times people don't even realize that they have needs, because the codependent doesn't realize it. And so they appear so strong and capable that people don't offer help. They don't even think that you need it. And so it's kind of a catch-22. We so need it, and we give to others hoping that they'll give to us, but we give this presentation that we got it all together, and so they just don't even consider that we need help. But they do consider that we are the source of their help. And we don't want to risk losing that, so that's one of the reasons we don't ask for help as well. Because, if I ask for something, they might abandon me, right? Because that's one of the core wounds in childhood. Parents weren't present. So it's, again, a catch-22. Typical frustration. You don't appreciate me or my efforts. The recurrent feeling is resentment and depression. Conflict management, they try to understand and be nice. They're afraid of confrontation because they're afraid of abandonment. The growth challenge is express your needs to your partner and others, self-care, and respect your partner's privacy, take time alone. To this day, I've been in counseling 20 years. To this day, I have to go off on my own, and for me it's usually nature, to figure out what's going on with me. And I have lots of tools. But until I get away from everything, I can't hear myself. So everybody's different, but to this day, that still is an issue for me, where the way I know I need to do that is when I'm really, really busy and I'm starting to resent taking care of others, meeting other people's needs. I'm starting to feel like I'm supposed to. Those are all indications to me of, ooh, you're heading in the wrong direction. You got to stop and figure out what's going on with you. What are you feeling inside? What are you needing right now? And that's where self-care comes in. Sometimes it's just to be quiet and in nature. Sometimes it's to read the Word. Sometimes it's to spend fun time with a friend. Sometimes it's to listen to music or dance in my kitchen by myself or cook a meal that I've never cooked before. It's different for everybody. Whatever brings you joy and passion is your self-care. So driving tractors wouldn't necessarily bring me that joy, but John might really enjoy that. We're all different that way. So that's the caretaker role, and that's why I focused in on this. There's lots of different developmental stages and different wounds that we could have, but for those of us with codependency issues, that's primarily the biggie for us. Any questions on
So as a
that?
caretaker, would that be like a fixer too, always wanting to fix everybody?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And you're really hoping to fix others so that they'll turn around and fix us.
Mm.
But again, we become so capable that they don't even think. And of course, people with victim mentalities are drawn to caretakers. They don't have it to give to you because they're not whole themselves. So, you know, I think of one client I have, every few months, she's graduated, but every few months she'll call me and she'll be like, I'm so sick of people. They always take advantage of me and, you know, nobody does anything for me, da-da-da. But she doesn't allow them to. She'll give money before people ask. She'll offer to do something before anyone even thinks of it. And she constantly is giving. She had an alcoholic father.
Mm.
And so she just periodically, she'll just kind of go off the road a little bit, and then she'll need a check-in. And I give her the same advice every time, and then she gets back on track. But, you know, again, I told you guys I used to believe that therapy brought healing, and I don't believe that anymore. I think it brings management. If I broke my wrist and it healed, I can use it and it can function like this one. But under stress, this one can get rebroken a lot easier than this one. So my mental health's the same way. My earliest program developed who I am, and it's really hard after so many years in that to so many years in recovery to change that. And so many of us, you know, don't really work on ourselves till we're middle age or older. So we have just so much programming this way that it's there in the background, and you have to be aware of it. Self-awareness is your key. And then if you have a good accountability group, support group, who's gentle and offers grace, but also speaks truth to you, that also is something that helps.
Yeah, I grew up with a parent that definitely was the one that was always handing out and doing, and I learned to be that way too. But like you said, I also got gratification out of it. It made me feel good about myself when I did it. But then it ended up becoming a burden. It ended up becoming that they depended on me and I didn't have that much to give. What I gave was all I could give.
Mm-hmm.
And felt a lot to me, but they thought I kept having more. And so when I have to back up again, then they feel rejected. And so then I got to go back and say, no, but I'm pushing back because I know you can do it, because I've been there, because I had a parent that did it for me, did it for me, and did it for me, to the point where I didn't know I could do it for myself. And now that I know I can do it for myself, I know you can too. So now I'm backing up, and they're not liking it. And I have to really check my feelings, like, hey, it's okay that they don't like you right now. It's okay that they're mad at you. They'll get it just like you did. So I have to remember that, but it's hard to go through.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it can be done. I mean, I've grown and, like you said, backpedaled, and then I'm like, oh, I'm back there again.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna start
That's
over.
a great example, because that is the process. We have to start taking care of ourselves, and when we do that, people in our lives are used to us not doing it. So that's a threat to them, right? They're now threatened with abandonment, and they go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Most of them will fight it. And so then when they fight, freaks us out, because we don't like conflict and confrontation, right? We don't like abandonment either. So we're already shaky, scared to take care of ourselves, and now we get this negative feedback, and it's a form of manipulation, and a lot of times it works initially, and so we fall back into the same old patterns. But that's why support is so important to you, with the other people encouraging you're on the right track, you're doing the right thing. It's not scripturally sound to give when you have nothing left to give. Jesus took time to separate and go off and pray, to replenish himself, to come back and give. We follow his example. So it's okay. It's okay to say no. He didn't heal everyone. He healed those the Father told him to, and those that had asked. So those are all guidance for us. And you have to kind of talk to your head, because you have a lot of messages from your childhood that tell you differently. And that threat response is so huge, and that's biological. That's not a thought process. It's just, and it's way faster. That survival brain is way faster than the brain we develop as we grow, and that's fully developed at 26. That was our logical thinking human brain, but it's much slower than the biological brain that we're born with. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it. Okay, at the back of this is a description of love. Would anyone like to read the agape paragraph?
I will. Agape in modern day Greek. It is a gentle, caring, selfless, giving, and generous type of love. The essence of agape love is self-sacrifice. Many have thought that this word represents divine, unconditional, active, volitional, and thoughtful love. It is a love which is relatively rare. Agape is a sacrificial love that is not based on a feeling, but a determined act of the will, a committed resolve to put the welfare of others above our own.
Thanks. And would anyone like to read toxic love?
I will. Toxic love is all-consuming, isolating, or constricting. Toxic love believes someone else has the power to make you happy, sets you up as a victim. Toxic love is an addiction with the other person as your drug of choice, as your higher power. As long as you believe that you have to have another person in your life to be happy, then you are really just an addict trying to protect your supply, using another person as your drug of choice. This is not true love, nor is it loving. True love is not a painful obsession. It is not taking a hostage or being a hostage. It is not accepting deprivation and abuse, or engaging in manipulation, dishonesty, and power struggles.
Does that resonate with any of you?
No. Daily, practically. And it's just amazing. And it's both of us.
Yeah. So healthy love, individuals seek personal development and growth as their first priority. Toxic love, individuals obsess over the other person's need for growth, obsess about the relationship. So one, we're excited and we're not threatened by another person's growth, even if it's different from us. If I'm Democrat and they're Republican, or they were Democrat and they want to change to Republican, that's not going to cause a divorce or a loss of friendship, because I can accept that they're different. But as codependents, we have difficulty separating, we think we're connected, so that's a threat when they're different from us. It makes us think that we're being abandoned, just like what you were talking about, Tammy. So we have to learn how to disengage and allow people to be who they are without it upsetting us. And because if we let this take over, this anxiety inside, we're going to try to manipulate them to go back to status quo. And it's the same thing what you were describing as you were trying to grow. People in your family were used to you playing a role and being a certain way. So as you try to grow, instead of the family adapting to your growth, they were trying to pull you back. Now, if you stay strong and continue in your path of healthiness, if that family is healthy enough, they will adapt and you'll still belong. So a lot of times, if I do couples counseling, I don't have to have both partners. If one person gets healthy, the other person gets healthy, because you will no longer accept behaviors or responses that are unhealthy. Now, sometimes that doesn't work.
It didn't work in mine.
Yeah.
Through the books that we read here, when we were into Danny Silk books and we were reading them, and God was showing me things about myself. He'll even tell you, my husband said that one of them was of the devil.
Keep your love on.
Keep your love on, was of the devil.
Oh, wow.
He was so stuck. He was just so stuck in his stuff. He did not want to look at it. He did not want to look at it. It was too painful for him.
Mm-hmm.
So here I am trying to get my love on, trying to get things right, and it was just very, very hard.
And that is the case where, you hope that they adapt, but at times, if they can't, you do suffer abandonment. Friendships, when you change the rules, sometimes those friends don't want to be responsible for themselves. They want a caretaker. They honestly believe that they can't survive without dependency on someone else. And so they're like leeches, they're sucking the life out of the relationship. When you refuse to let that happen, they'll go and find another relationship to suck the life out of. Toxic love, a therapist friend of mine told me, and I love this metaphor, I don't know why, it's kind of gross actually, but he says like 2 ticks on a dog. They're just sucking the life out of the relationship, the dog representing the relationship. And then they get bloated, fall off, and they go and find something else to. And that's what toxic love is. You're feeding your need, that void, but God's the answer, and He's going to give you answers for healing. Okay, the second one, individuals in healthy love desire for and allow for room for self and others to grow in a relationship. In toxic love, individuals desire sameness and security in their relationships. Security, comfort, and sameness, intensity of need seen as proof of love may really be fear, insecurity, and loneliness. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with who were looking for a relationship and they're, I'm so in love. I can't stop thinking about them, and they're excited. And there's a bunch of chemicals that are excreted in our body when we're in the in-love stage. But that's not love. When you have high chemistry like that, a lot of times that's woundedness connecting to woundedness. So those who are fresh out of a relationship and going back into a relationship, I try and warn them, be cautious. Now they're so high on that feeling that they usually don't listen and just keep going. They'll learn eventually. But that high intensity connection is not love. It's woundedness connecting to woundedness. Any questions on that? Okay. Individuals maintain separate and individual interests outside of their relationship, maintain other meaningful relationships. This is healthy love. Toxic love, individuals seek to maintain total involvement in only their relationship. They limit their social lives, neglect old friends and interests. How many of you have ever experienced someone who got in a new relationship and you are no longer invited to hang out with them? Yeah. It's not healthy to be just you and I. You won't grow. You've got to have other relationships and bring that to you. And if that was the case, again, Jesus would have just stayed with the disciples and never interacted with anyone else. But the cross exemplifies our relationship with Him and our relationship with others, and that's the model to follow. But as codependents, relationships can be scary. We had a lot of pain in relationships, so the one side is merging and needing to be in relationship, can't be alone, but the other side is fearful of relationships, that I have to give up me to be in relationship with you, and that's too painful, so I'd rather just stay with me. And so they might have friendships, they're usually more surface level, but long-term intimate relationships, they're too fearful of, that they won't exist in them, and so they're real scared. Individual's relationship is based on trust and the healthy love. Toxic love, individual's relationship consists of jealousy, possessiveness, and fear of competition. A lot of power struggles. Do you guys know what a power struggle is? I think we should move into a ranch. I think we should move into a two-story. Who's going to win? I think we should go on vacation with my parents. I think we should go on vacation with my parents. Who's going to win? I think our kids should go to private school. I think our kids should go to public school. Who's going to win? So there's no negotiation. It's only my way or your way. Whereas healthy love would listen to the reasoning behind both and try to find a win-win for both parties. Toxic love doesn't do that because, again, differentness is threatening. It's my way or the highway. And there's extremes to this, right? The most extreme would be the narcissist. All of us have some narcissism, but that would be the one that truly does not even consider your needs. In healthy love, individuals engage in compromise, negotiation, or taking turns at leading, solve problems together. In toxic love, individuals engage in power plays for control, blaming, passive or aggressive manipulation. We just hit on that. In healthy love, individuals embrace each other's individuality. In toxic love, individuals try to change each other into a carbon copy of themselves. I have one couple I'm working with, oh my gosh. She actually tells her partner how to eat when they're not eating the correct way. When they said this statement, it doesn't make sense, so they should have said this statement. And I mean, just everything this partner does. Blue shirt, why'd you pick blue shirt? Blue is not a good color to wear to church. People might get upset by that. You should wear the red shirt. And and unfortunately she's female and her partner is male, so that even is another dynamic there where she's just emasculating him, right? It's not a good situation at all. And she does not see it. She, in her mind, her coping defense has rationalized that it makes sense. That of course you don't chew ice like that, or of course you don't chew with your mouth full, which we all learn, right? But you can't control other people's resources. If you don't like it and you have a problem with it, that's your problem, and you need to do something about it. You can ask your partner, but you can't expect them to meet your need. And you have to grieve that loss if they don't. If they choose to be different, you have to grieve that to be able to move on.
So what I would ask is, why was he drawn to that?
Because she's very codependent, and he has ADHD, so he's not capable in taking care of himself in a lot of things, and she is. She's right behind him all the time. Before he loses his keys, she tells him where they are.
So there's a benefit for him.
Yes. And they were attracted to each other physically and thought the personalities, but what you've learned in this class is we are attracted to someone wounded at the same developmental stage as we were, and it's the woundedness we're attracted to, the familiarity of it. We don't know this on a conscious level, but on an unconscious level, that's what's going on. Which is wonderful on the one hand, because you have the opportunity to provide to each other the healing that you did not get from your parents. But a lot of times when we're wounded, we want that peace, so we try to get it from a partner, and they're trying to get it from us. But if we let go of that, and we're there for our partner, and they're there for us, then we've got a good life. Any other questions on that one? Okay. For you teenagers, it's very important. Help you choose the right person. Okay, individuals base their relationship on reality and truth. In healthy love, in toxic love, individuals base their relationship on delusion and avoidance of the unpleasant. So in the toxic love, they can't handle confrontation. They can't handle any difference of opinion, anything they perceive as negative. So you'll get couples who never talk about anything, and I've had couples who got divorced and the partner comes in and it's like, we never fought. Just one day she wanted a divorce, and I still don't know why. And they think never fighting is a good thing, and that indicates love, but it doesn't. It indicates a lack of intimacy. You're going to have conflict. You have to learn how to get through it, not avoid it. In healthy love, individuals engage in self-care. Their emotional state is not dependent on the other's mood. In toxic love, individuals expect each other to fix and or rescue the other, which works, like that one couple, it worked to a certain extent, but what about when she has a need for someone to take care of her, maybe she's sick, then it doesn't work. She's mad at him for not being there for her, but he never was, and she's expecting something that was never there. So he's mad at her for an expectation that was never there, and she's mad at him for not meeting her need.
So what's the solution to that? Since I live that out most of my days.
The solution to that is your self-care.
Okay.
It's boundaries, knowing where you begin and end and where that person begins and end. And the way I express that is you are in charge of what I call your BFAT, your behavior, your body, your feelings, attitude. God gave you your body, your stewardship over your body and everything inside of you, your feelings, attitude, and thoughts. This person, he also gave responsibility for everything inside them. So if I'm in this lane with my BFAT and they're in this lane with their BFAT, there's a double line. So sometimes we're right on that double line in a relationship and we don't quite know, do we get to set the boundary or not? So it's the second greatest commandment to love others as you love yourself. So I give to others, but not more than I have to give. So I don't deplete myself. I give freely with joy, or at least without resentment. And if I can't do that, I say no.
Oh, so that's where the line is.
Yes.
When you feel the resentment, or when you
Yes.
feel like, okay.
Yeah, that's your alarm bell going off. That means you're giving too much.
Yeah, because I've talked about, I don't know where the line actually is. Or
Yeah.
where to find the line.
Yeah.
So that's the indication, is the feeling that you're starting to resent.
Yes.
Well, I'm yours in this, but, okay.
Yes.
I would imagine it would be somebody that wants to do that, like tell them what to wear. That's like an OCD personality, would you think? Because I know that for me, that's how I am, and I have to like back up and be okay with not being perfect.
Yeah.
And that's hard, because I was totally the opposite, and then I went to pull the opposite way, so I gotta find the fine line of controlling things.
Yes, when you say OCD, I get a little nervous just because the diagnosis and what we hear in general public is very different. So
Okay.
like OCD, they don't really have that choice, whereas we have the choice. So we might feel inside that there's anxiety if we don't do this, but it's more than that. for
What would you
OCD.
label that then?
I guess perfectionistic tendencies, wanting things a certain way, feeling
Must be
driven for
why
them
it's
to be a
ATM,
certain way.
because it means perfection.
Yeah, yeah. And perfection to what makes us feel safe.
Right.
So the chewing ice, to me it wouldn't bother, but to that person, for whatever reason, it doesn't make them feel safe. Maybe they have sensory issues, maybe they had a dad that when he chewed ice, right afterwards he would have alcohol. Or maybe it reminds them of them drinking alcohol and violence. Triggers, you know, they don't necessarily make sense. I've had people walk down the street and just full-blown panic attack, and as we process, they're like, I don't know what happened, nothing was there, and then realize a stranger walked by with a certain cologne, and that reminded them of an incident in childhood where someone abused them with that same cologne. So your triggers don't necessarily make sense to you on a conscious level, but you want to pay attention to them because they're telling you, I don't feel safe. Your body's telling you, I don't feel safe, I'm feeling threatened. Your brain gets hijacked, and sometimes you are safe, but it goes back, and so it tells you you're not. So you have to do what's called grounding, and that's putting your feet on the ground, looking around, and you're deep breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, twice as long. I'm here in this room because people love me. I'm safe. There's no threat of danger. I'm looking, I'm using my senses of sight, sound, touch to tell me I'm here and I'm safe. I'm not there where that happened because your brain is saying you're right back there. That glow, I'm right back there. So you have to ground yourself to say, no, I'm not there, I'm here. And that deep breathing relaxes your body so that you can access the brain to do that. If you don't do the deep breathing, you're not going to be able to talk yourself out of it. Okay. What time is it? 5 after?
9,
Okay.
10.
Okay. Let's do that last one then. Individuals engage in self-care. Their emotional state is not dependent on the other's moods. Okay. Individuals expect each other in toxic love to fix and rescue. Healthy love. Individuals have a loving detachment for each other. Healthy concern while letting go. Toxic love. Individuals engage in fusion, being obsessed with the other's problems and feelings. That's kind of what you were talking about. It's learning that when you can't let go and your mind's like, what happened? And where did it go wrong? And you want to, instead of, because it's still outer focus, you want to internalize my side of the street. Did I set a boundary or was a boundary crossed on my resources? Because a lot of times we'll get triggered when we're disrespected, when, and that would be the way someone talks to us, their tone or body language or their words, or when they disrespect us by getting in our lane, telling us how to behave, how to think, how to feel, what attitude we should have. Those are our boundaries. But we do it too. I can't tell you how many women who are married as a single woman struggling with rehabbing a house will offer their husband to me without even asking their husband. That's taking their time, that's taking their physical energy, their mental knowledge, without even asking. And I know it's easy to do that, but that's so disrespectful.
Well, so I have such a problem because in Christ you're supposed to be submissive, right? And at the end of the day, I guess he's supposed to be the leader and he's supposed to make the final decision. But he just barks orders, right? And then I just do. But then I'm so upset later because I'll say something and then feel totally inconsiderate because it wasn't a consideration. So we just do that. We constantly do that. But then I'm a pleaser, so I'll do it. But inside I'm like, and then I have a conversation with her. You know what I mean? So she gets to hear all this good stuff. And I'm usually like the victim of that. And so I see the pattern. It's just I don't know how to set the actual boundary and be okay with it.
Yes.
Like, because there's so much codependency.
Yes.
But it's constant. And it's everything, even before we left this morning, you know, and our little Sonos system is that, well, you gotta call it blah, blah, blah. So, you know, and then the heart rate gets up, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I just need to get away from you now.
Yeah.
But he needs to get away from me too. Like,
So you start first with the second commandment, to love others as we love ourselves. So in letting him talk to me this way, is that loving?
No.
If I had a child, would I be okay with this person talking to that child that way?
No.
So I would protect a child, but I don't protect my own self. That's what codependents do. So that helps to visualize that child. So think of, you have a younger child inside of you that God has given you responsibility to care for. And that can help to kind of overcome that resistance and say, okay, am I caring for this child? Am I allowing this child to be spoken to or treated in a manner that is unloving and uncaring and harmful? And if I am, then I need to set boundaries, say this is not acceptable. I am happy to have a conversation with you, but if you're going to speak to me in that tone, then I get triggered and can't hear you. And I know you want to be heard, so let's keep it conversational.
Although I hear him and then I do it.
So,
Every time.
yeah, so that starts first, where you, if that's the case, you got to ask yourself, it starts with, if I say yes to doing this, even if you don't externally say yes, but you're going to do it, can I do it freely, no strings attached, with joy, or at least without resentment? If I can't, I don't do it. It's better not to do it. And then you're gonna have a lot of anxiety.
I already feel it.
Yeah.
I'm already sick to my stomach in fear.
And you have to ride that out. And then the minute you ride that out, that's a new experience. That new experience wires neurons together. And so now your brain says, every time this happens, it's not always this outcome, because that one time it was this.
So that's the overcoming grief, like that you were talking about.
And
Until you
fear.
overcome that grief. you
Of
can't-
abandonment and everything, because I
Yes.
have that abandonment issue. First I was
Well-
adopted, but second another alcoholic.
Oh,
And so there
Yeah.
you go. It's just
Yeah.
too scary. It's
Yeah.
too scary. There is a fear of abandonment. There's a fear of a lot of things.
yeah. So you would really need to work a lot on your childhood programs to be able to set those boundaries with your spouse. There's a class on boundaries that I did that they have, is it on the church site?
It's on Facebook.
It's on Facebook? Okay.
Yeah, you just have to search it. Once you go to like our Facebook page, you can search it in a little engine.
I would recommend watching that. It would be very good for you. But you're going to need support around you. So codependency meetings are great. Adult children of alcoholic meetings are great.
Counseling with Maureen.
Awesome.
She has a card.
But you need support
And
because
a
it's
waitlist.
scary. It's very scary. It's biologically you're risking death. I mean, we know you're not, but internally that's what's happening. For you to stand up, you're risking death, which is very scary. But once you go through that, you realize that it's not true. Fear, false evidence appearing real.
And I know that, and I'm a health coach even, but
Yeah.
it's still like unbelievable. There's
Yeah.
so much work to be done.
Yeah, and yeah, there is for all of us all the time. So yeah, when you're in enough pain, then you'll do the work. As long as life's going okay, you're gonna stay.
You're right.
The pain will motivate us. Pain and pleasure, but it's usually pain that does it.
Mhm.
You get tired enough of it, you will change.
You know, I used to say, because my husband always say I'm not submitting.
You're not
Submitting,
submitting.
but there's a difference between submitting to his, excuse me, but control issues.
Yes.
And a difference between submitting to really him as your husband, you know, that love that you're submitting to Christ. When you don't see Christ in him, it's hard to submit. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's one of the ones that I think gets twisted a little bit in our church because it's actually spiritual submission. If they're not a believer, then you're not yoked to someone who's not a believer, and that's what throws it off. So you have to take into consideration all of that, because you're not going to put yourself under submission to someone who's a serial killer and say, sure, go ahead, kill me. So if they're spiritually dead, it doesn't make sense either. But that's my own personal view, so take it with a grain of salt. We all have to get there in our own, spiritual lives. But it is taken out of context. It's not submission to everything. It's submission to, and you can double check with John, but my understanding is it's submission to spiritual guidance.
Wow. I've gotten it all wrong so far then.
Now, I do believe submission is good because you have to have a leader in the relationship, but not if it means sacrificing me.
Oh.
I have to exist. That second commandment's huge. And then the other thing is, if my spouse, like say I want to go, I don't know, to Paris for a vacation, and my spouse is like, no, we just don't have the money for it. I would submit to that.
Right.
And in submission, I'm still angry and upset because I have my heart set on Paris. I'm going to go to God to help me with my grief and to help me with being at peace in accepting my partner's decision. So I will offer my suggestion, but I will go with their guidance because that's a generic thing. But if it's about, I don't know of an example, but maybe,
Well, it's even just having coffee with Debbie. He gets upset, he's mad, he's obsessive, he's texting, where are you? Blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, I don't ask for Paris, I ask for coffee. I
yeah.
ask for, 15 minutes with a friend. It's not,
And healthy love is freedom. Because God gives us free will to choose to accept the gift of Christ as our Savior. He doesn't make us.
right.
So it's always we follow the model of Christ as we understand through His Word. And if it doesn't align with that, we don't want to follow it.
Right.
We have that umbrella of protection when we're in His guidance. And if we step out of it, we don't. So again, with your spouse, just by you getting healthy and leaning on God, you say, honey, this is what the Bible says about relationships. Show me where it says you shouldn't include others. That it should be just, show me in the Bible where it says that. And that helps lead him to, there's a lot more to that. But that's where you can start. And then you're teaching him to be my leader. Be my spiritual leader. Let's go to the Word. Is it grounded in the Word? If it's not, then we got to question it. Because the heart is deceitful. We don't know our motives. All right, let's close out in prayer. Would anyone else like to pray? I love praying, but I don't like to be selfish about it. Okay. Dear Lord Jesus, I just thank you so much for the love that you have for us and that you're constantly seeking after us, not just to know you, but to actually experience heaven on earth. And heaven on earth means being closer and closer to you in our relationships with other people just as much as in our spiritual life with you. And Lord, there's so many wounds and so much junk that we've accumulated over the years that's just weighing us down and preventing us from true freedom and truly experiencing what it means to be whole and loved. Lord, I pray that for each one of us, that we would, while we are alive here on earth, experience what it means to be whole and to be loved by ourselves and by others and by you. I pray for John or whoever is speaking today, that your Spirit would just rain down on us, that you would be with us, you would fill us with yourself, that we would go out from this place of community with a sense of love and care for others, and that we would not hoard what we learn, but we would share. You're a God of abundance. Whatever we have, we offer, just like you offered your life in the form of bread and wine as symbolism of your sacrifice of your life. I pray that we would be offering our lives, that we would be bread and wine to those around us who don't know you, Lord. Sometimes that's our spouse. Sometimes it's our children. Sometimes it's our closest friends. Pray that we have a heart to share. In your name.